this morning, and welcome to a former Buckeyes who are in the coaching profession ranked edition of the OHIO podcast. Do us a big favor this morning, smash that like button. Leave us a comment down in the comment section below, and by all means, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free, costs you nothing. All right, let's dive right into it. So we do this every single off season. We take a list. I keep a list of all former Buckeyes who are now in the coaching profession, whether that's high school, college, whether that's a coordinator or position coach, head coach, or in the NFL. I try to keep a list of those former Buckeyes, and every year we kind of rank them. We kind of follow their progress. Now, there's two reasons why I do this. Number one, I just love Ohio State, and I love former Buckeyes. And I love following Buckeyes' careers. And the other reason why we do this is I think it's important to kind of watch the progression of these guys because you never know which one might be the next Ohio State head coach, possibly. So, that being said, let's dive into this season, this offseason's 2025 former Buckeyes who are in the coaching profession ranked number 10. Let's start with Pepe Pearson, was a running back at Ohio State from 1994 to 1997. Has quite the coaching career. Has coached semi-pro, arena league, uh, and now he's in college. And he's been at Tarleton State now for a couple years. He's the running backs coach and the assistant coach there at Tarleton. Pepe's been on this list for me personally for a couple years and kind of hovering down there in the top 10, but to be on the top 10 is quite impressive. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this, this is not just my list, but this is a consensus of all of the hosts here at the OHIO podcast. We talked about this on a Sunday night on one of our live roundtables a couple weeks ago. I took all that information, I tallied it up, and this is the consensus. So, consensus number 10 is Pepe Pearson. Let's move on to number 9. I hope you enjoy the sounds of smooth jazz because Kenny Guyton is number 9. That's right, smooth jazz Kenny Guyton. I think one of the greatest backup quarterbacks in Ohio State history. Kenny Guyton has gone on to coach wide receivers and quarterbacks. Um, he was not a running back. He was a quarterback in 2009 to 2013. Not sure why I put running back there. Hey, it's early in the morning. I'm allowed to make mistakes. Please forgive me for that. Houston, Arkansas. He's coached wide receivers, both locations now at the as in Wisconsin with Luke Fickle. He's coaching the quarterbacks. Keep your eye on Kenny Guyton, maybe a possible quarterbacks coach at Ohio State in the future. Number 8, moving right along now. My goodness, I see another mistake I've made. Obviously, when I was copying these, I forgot to change running back to quarterback. So my bad on these. Number 8, JT Barrett was quarterback at Ohio State from 2013 to 2017. He is currently the quarterbacks coach for the Chicago Bears. As you can see, he was on the coaching staff there in Detroit in the NFL. So another former Ohio State quarterback coaching quarterbacks, this one at the highest level possible in the NFL. Urban Meyer famously said of JT Barrett that he was going to be a great coach one day. I believe JT is the son of a former high school football coach as well. So coaching's in his blood, and JT is working his way up the ladder. First year on this list, I believe, for us here at the OHIO podcast. Congratulations to JT Barrett, who finds himself on this inaugural list at number 8. All right, number 7, and I did get the position right for him. That would be one James Laurinaitis, the little animal, a linebacker for Ohio State from 2005 to 2008. He's currently coaching the linebackers room there at Ohio State. Has so for the past couple years, starting his coaching profession in Notre Dame coaching linebackers with his good buddy Marcus Freeman and former teammate. Marcus will be making an appearance on this list here shortly. But James Laurinaitis is a up and coming coach at Ohio State. There is no doubt about that. A lot of people have him tagged for the future defensive coordinator's position, similar to the path that Brian Hartline has taken to get to the OC position in Columbus, Ohio with the Buckeyes. Former Buckeye, position coach, stuck around, great recruiter, developed really well, getting his chance as a coordinator. People believe James Laurinaitis is on the fast track to do exactly the same thing at Ohio State, but just on the other side of the ball, obviously. Played his NFL career with the Rams. I believe he's the leading tackle for the Rams, leading tackler, all time tackler for the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a 3 time All American for the Buckeyes as well. So James Laurinaitis definitely has the credentials when he walks into a family's room to try to recruit their son to Ohio State to play linebacker. Look at me, right? Plus, his dad was a famous professional wrestler, and that's pretty cool too to us old guys. Number 6, let's talk about the OG, Tim Walton. Played for Ohio State from 1990 to 1993. Man, I'm all over the place. He wasn't a linebacker. Man, my goodness gracious. Boggsy needs to step up his game and look at those positions a little bit closer before making these. My bad, everybody. I believe he was a defensive back at Ohio State when he played back in 1990 to 93. That was a little bit before I really kind of started paying attention as a kiddo. But Tim Walton is known as the OG. He is currently the quarterbacks coach and co-defensive coordinator at Ohio State. Has a lot of NFL coaching experience, including being a coordinator in the NFL. He's a tremendous recruiter and absolutely deserved the promotion that he got from Ryan Day as co-defensive coordinator. Now helping out Matt Patricia on that side of the ball. It's a pay bump. It's a little bit of a title bump with a pay bump, but everybody knows Tim Walton is in charge of that defensive backfield, especially the cornerbacks, and he's doing a tremendous job for the Buckeyes. Before we reveal the top 5 on this list, let's share today's scripture verse with all of you. Colossians 3:13. Forbearing one another and forgiving one another, if any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. It's not a suggestion, it's not a persuasion, it's a command. It is our job to forgive people when they have wronged us, when they ask for it. And I hope that you have it in your heart to be a forgiving individual as well, because it is a command of the Lord. Number 5. Let's talk about Brian Hartline. We just did that. It was a wide receiver for the Buckeyes from 2005 to 2008. He's currently the offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach at Ohio State. Has had his opportunities to leave Ohio State and go coach at other schools, but has remained faithful to Columbus, Ohio, and faithful to Ryan Day and Ohio State. Some people have him tagged as the possible future head coach in Columbus, Ohio. We'll see how he does as a coordinator. There is no doubt about it that he is the best recruiter in all of college football when it comes to recruiting a position, that being the wide receiver position. And he is doggone considered the best developer at the position. So not only is he the best recruiter, he's also the best developer. How does that translate to being an offensive coordinator and calling the plays for an offense? We're going to find out this year. But right now, Brian Hartline definitely deserves to be in the top 5 of this list. Maybe some could argue even a little bit higher. But the consensus for him right now is until he gets some head coaching experience, let's keep our eye on him and see how he does currently at the coordinator position. The next 4 positions, or the next 4 in this ranking, are all head coaches. And so it is obvious to the panel here at the OHIL podcast that weigh head coaches much more heavily than they do coordinators, especially at the college and NFL level. The next one is someone who used to be number 1 on this list, but he has slipped in the last couple years, and that being my good buddy Luke Fickell. He was a defensive tackle for Ohio State from 1992 to 1996. He's best buds with my cousin Ryan Miller and a part of the Second and Seven organization, which we support here at the OHIO podcast. He's currently the head coach over at Wisconsin, and he is the head coach there after having a very successful stint down I-71 from Columbus and Cincinnati, where he led the Bearcats, a group of 5 team, all the way to the college football playoff when it was just 4-team playoff. So hats off to Luke Fickell for the job he did in Cincinnati. He then took that over to Madison, Wisconsin, where things have just not gone well for Luke. And if you look at the Badgers' schedule this season in 2025, he has got a massive uphill battle in 2025 if he's going to get to a bowl game and start to rebuild that program in Madison. This might be the last year for Luke. However, they did give him a 1 year extension on his contract, which I thought was pretty interesting. How warm is the seat for Luke? Well, if you ask the fan base there in Madison, it's pretty warm. Do I see Luke eventually getting back to Columbus, Ohio? Possibly. Will it be as a head coach? Probably not, at least not right now. But we'll see how he can get things turned around maybe up there in Madison, Wisconsin. But right now, number 4 on this list is indeed Luke Fickell. Now, the most intriguing guy on this list, in my opinion, is the one who has jumped the most on my personal list from last year to this year, and that is the former Heisman Trophy winning running back Eddie George, who has taken his Tennessee State 3 year stint as a head coach and now has moved to the MAC back to the state of Ohio, where he's the new head coach at Bowling Green. He of course, was the starting running back at Ohio State, played for the Buckeyes from 92 to 95, did indeed win the Heisman in 95, like I said, and now he's the head coach for the Eagles. I have got one eye on Eddie all season long this year. Bowling Green, I think, has gone to 2 consecutive bowl games. They're about a 500 team the last couple of years, 6-6, 7-5, somewhere in that range. And so now Eddie's going to have to take what was built there in Bowling Green, Ohio, and he's going to try to have to build on that. If he can be successful in the first couple years at Bowling Green, maybe going 8-4, 9-3, maybe even 10-2, get the Eagles to a MAC championship game. He can then take that and he could probably take that to a power 4 head coaching position if he wants it. What is interesting here is a lot of Ohio State fans have one eye on Brian Hartline and they have one eye now on Eddie George. And if for some reason Ryan Day decides maybe he wins another national championship and he decides it's time to try to go win a Super Bowl, a lot of Ohio State fans think that that job could be Brian Hartline's or Eddie George, depending on how both of those guys do the next couple of years. So keep your eye on that. Number 2, and this one is very controversial if you ask my co host, Chris Wilds. That would be Notre Dame's head coach, Marcus Freeman. Now, I actually believe Marcus Freeman, he's number 1 on my list. He just coached in a national championship game with a roster that was nowhere near as impressive as the one that Ohio State took to the national championship game. Um, did Notre Dame have a little bit of an easier schedule than Ohio State did to get there? Absolutely. However, you cannot argue with the fact that they took down Indiana, Georgia, and Penn State with a lesser roster, in my opinion, than what James Franklin has at Penn State and what Kirby Smart has in Athens, Georgia, in both of those games, and he did so impressively. Marcus Freeman is indeed an up and coming coach in the profession, and being a former Buckeye makes this incredibly intriguing for me. Does he like Notre Dame? He sure professes his love for it, that's for sure, as Chris would say, as he's thrown some shade back towards his alma mater and some of the statements that he's made. However, I'm willing to look over those and forgive those if one day we need someone like Marcus Freeman to step in and be the head coach at Ohio State, because Marcus Freeman is showing himself to be one of the biggest and best up and coming young coaches in this profession. There are things about Notre Dame that I believe make it a much more difficult job to win at than, say, Ohio State. Number one, their academic standard is very, very high. Not saying Ohio State's isn't high, it is much improved compared to what it used to be back when I was a student, but yet Notre Dame's academic standards are incredibly high. Plus, they have certain rules and restrictions that they place on their head coach that are kind of unfair. For instance, the transfer portal, they don't take anybody from the transfer portal who's an underclassman. That's kind of where you want to go if to the transfer portal, because you want that person coming from the transfer portal to possibly have multiple years left in his ability to play for you in your system. So that is a disadvantage for Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame as well. So looking at kind of the totality of that, I think the job that Marcus Freeman done has been incredibly impressive. And plus, I kind of just like the guy. He's got a swagger to him that I think speaks to a lot of young people. Now, he hasn't recruited very well at Notre Dame, but again, I think he's recruiting with one hand tied behind his back. You give him the resources and the ability to recruit at his alma mater at Ohio State, I think Marcus Freeman could be an absolute recruiting monster. And so couple that with the job that he's doing, and he is kind of going through and making those mistakes at Notre Dame that Ryan Day made as a head coach his first few years as a head coach at Ohio State, where he's learning on the job. And now you get someone who has is kind of worked his craft, has his voice and his footing as a head coach. I am incredibly intrigued at the possibility of Marcus Freeman one day coming to Columbus, Ohio, and being the head coach for your Buckeyes. If that day happens, Chris has threatened to never watch an Ohio State game again as long as Marcus Freeman was the head coach. We'll see if that's true or not, if and when that day were to come. That leads us to number one on this list. And this one was a no brainer for everybody else on the panel, except for me, and that is former defensive end from Ohio State, Mike Vrabel, who played for the Buckeyes from 1993 until 1996. Good buds with Luke Fickell and with my cousin Ryan Miller. Again, has a big hand in the beginning and start and the continuation of the second and seven organization. Has a ton of NFL coaching experience. He coached for the Tennessee Titans, as you can see in the picture right here. This year, he's the new head coach for the New England Patriots. And last year, there was a lot of buzz after that fourth consecutive loss to the team up north that if Ryan Day was not going to be retained as the head coach at Ohio State, that there was going to be phone calls made to Mike Vrabel, a la kind of similar to what we saw with Urban Meyer when he took a year off from coaching when he was down in Florida, went to the booth, and then followed that up with the head coaching position at Ohio State. Mike Vrabel was not a head coach last year. He was an analyst up in Cleveland for the Browns, living back in his Northeast Ohio location where he was from. And so there was a lot of buzz that Mike Vrabel might be that guy. I just don't think Mike Vrabel's a college coach. He has spoke several times in interviews that he just doesn't like the recruiting process that is in college football. He doesn't like spending the time recruiting. He would rather spend the time in the office coaching and developing players in the NFL, scheming against fellow coaches. That's kind of Mike Vrabel's forte. That's more in his lane, and that's completely understandable. I believe Mike Vrabel's a much better NFL coach than he would be a college coach, in my opinion. Do I think he would be a successful college coach if he wanted to be? Absolutely. But it sounds like he doesn't want to be. And so, why would you try to force somebody to be something that they don't want? They're not going to enjoy the job. They're not going to give their best effort, more than likely, if that's the case. And so I'm not really sure why there's all the love for Mike Vrabel, but I understand why he would be number one on a lot of people's lists. Again, not saying it that this list has to be only strictly who do I think could be possible Ohio State coaches. However, I like to look at that aspect when creating this list. But Mike Vrabel is indeed the most successful former Buckeye to be coaching in the NFL. And so you have to tip your hat to Mike Vrabel for what he's done in translating his career over to coaching and then being very successful in the NFL. And I'm really intrigued to find out how he does in the NFL this year as the head coach for the New England Patriots now that he's back. All right, guys, that is this morning's list. I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry for the mistakes on the positions when I make these kind of quickly and I'm trying to put them all together way early in the morning and every now and then I guess I copy pasted and just missed. My bad. Have a good day, everybody. Let me know what you think about my list down in the comments section below. What does your list look like? Can you put together a top 10 list? I'd love to see what you think. Is there somebody we missed that you think deserves to be on the top 10 list? There's quite a few former Buckeyes who indeed are coaching, whether that be in high school, college. Let me know what you all think about that as well. Have a great day, everybody. Don't forget, we go live tonight for the call-in show, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here on YouTube. Ring the bell, get notified so you don't miss it. That way, YouTube will let you know, hey, Bogsy's going live and he's doing a call-in show right now. That way, you can call in and give me your opinion about this list or some other things. We have a good topic tonight that we're going to discuss. Maybe you want to talk about the NFL draft. Maybe you want to talk about the spring game. We'd love to talk about any of it with you as long as it's about the Buckeyes or that dreaded team up north. Have a great day, everybody. Be kind to one another. I owe someone's OH. Sing Carmen Heil with all your heart. You all know what to do. Go Bucks.